Here we go. Hi, this is Eric Stromquist. Welcome to Control Talk Now, your smart building video cast and podcast for the week ending July 15, 2018. My name is Eric. All right, welcome to Control Talk Now, your smart building video cast and podcast for the week ending July 15, 2018. My name is Eric Stromquist, and I am joined as usual by the man, the myth, the legend, the one, the only, the hardest working man in show business, Kenny Smyers, the control man from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Kenny, well, welcome to the show, big dog. People were missing you last week, man. It was nuts, man. There was almost a riot because they didn't get their
I'm sure. Yeah, we let our constant watchers down. We apologize, but it was a necessity thing. We had a family wedding since the day before 4th of July. We've had visitors from Germany and all parts of the United States. My brother Jesse's daughter Samantha got married to Keith, and they had a great wedding. And since that day, we've had a daily episode of something. And my sister Lori, who lives in Germany, she's married to Dan Pond, my brother-in-law, who was my former boss. I was a director of operations at Pond Security. Well, he's the owner. And now my sister, who married him 45 days after they met in Germany, they got married. And now she's the Geschäftsführerin, so she runs Pond Security in Germany. But they're doing great, and they left this evening. So we're back to normal, Eric. We're back on both.
You also got some big news. Tell everybody about your little the celebration with the big black balloon and what that was all.
No, that was amazing too. It was one of those reveal gender parties where the baby, the doctor, my daughter had her sonogram, and they sent the results to my wife, and she was the sole possessor of the sex of the child until we had this reveal thing on.
And you couldn't get it out of her, man, with all your interrogation techniques?
Hey, you know what? That need to know thing, that strict need to know for the military, I believe that if I don't need to know it, I don't want to know it, because no way Ken leaks that information out, because it was so much time and energy. It was a marvelous show. But my daughter, Sabrina, and her husband, Brendan, are expecting a girl, a little lovely girl, certainly. And
congratulations.
So, yeah, we're really excited. It will be our first grandchild. And, it's always, it's why we're here. And we talk about all the controls and control trends and everything, but when push comes to shove, the real reason is to have children and to be your best as parents and love people in the human world. And
right,
because we're here for, it's an intermediate stop, that's for sure.
No, but buddy, and I am so happy for you. And what our audience might not know is that Ken and I also have to maintain our marriages here. And I get accused quite often that I love Kenny more than I love my wife, because I'm always doing control trend stuff with him. And I think you get started. So when the wives go, no, you cannot do it this week. We had to apologize to our community. We got to. I personally cannot afford another divorce, and you don't want one. You're an awesome woman. So anyway, Kenny, that being said,
I'm digging the hat. Okay, I'm digging the hat. I gotta say that right off the bat. I'm digging
you like the hat? Yeah.
So Dion.
Well, so one of the things about shaving your head is that when you've got your head shaved, it looks pretty cool. But it takes a while to do it. When you don't, it looks really bad. So I'm wearing the hat, right?
Oh, you didn't have to say that's TMI, baby. You could have glossed right over that and said, I was down at the store and I saw this thing. I said, I had to have this hat.
I was down at the store. I saw this thing. I had to have this hat.
There you go.
Now I got it. But I will say this. It was between this and the KMC hat that I have. And, Kenny and I are not above wearing your hats on our show. Just send them to me and Kenny, and we'll wear them, right, Kenny?
Yeah, well, I was going to grab one here, but I actually wore golf, and we have a rib hat. Was the last one we got.
Yeah.
Angie Jarvis hooked us up with these fabulous red RIB hats.
I've got one of those. Those are great too. So yeah, send your swag. We'll wear them. Yeah. We'll wear anything.
Especially when you got the control trends coming up, and we're going to be doing the sponsor push. So this is all part of the process,
Yeah, that's right, Kenny. That's right. We'll talk about that, man. We got, as we said on the show before, we got the Fox Theater booked in Atlanta. It'll be that Sunday night before AHR. It's going to be the biggest show yet. And the Fox Theater is spectacular. It's been around Atlanta forever. Yeah, all we need now is sponsors. With money, we can make it a great, great thing. So those of you who already sponsored, thank you very much. Distech, Belimo,
EZIO,
EIO,
Siemens,
Siemens. Yep. So,
Thesis,
and who else?
and Thesis. It's a company
Oh,
out of Spain.
Antiques. That's right. That's right. Yeah. So we got some new ones. So, yeah, it's like something that Kenny and I we love doing it, but we do get a little bit nervous because I think now that people know that it's going to happen, they kind of oh yeah, of course we're going to sponsor it, and it gets around to the last minute. Meanwhile, Kenny and I have had to make 2 or 3 payments. So if you are going to sponsor, please, sooner the better. Sponsor frequently, sponsor often, and sponsor big.
Well,
All right, buddy.
yeah, okay. All right. Well, listen, Eric, we got some great posts. Yeah, we'll be getting that information out to everybody. And if there's any questions, please get a hold of us at your earliest convenience. But Eric, so we made our apologies for the no-show last week, last Control Talk Now. So we're 274, but nothing has slowed down in our industry. Nothing, zero. I mean, we had acquisitions. We'll talk about the first one, and what the Siemens, why Siemens bought Comfy and how they will make perfect places. That was a good capture you posted. What do you think the significance of Siemens buying Comfy is?
Well, I think when we're going to be our guest on Ken Sinclair in a little bit, and we're going to be talking about it. I think the building. I mean, I think the overall theme is, and Ken Sinclair hit on this, is the humanization of the building. I think thinking of the inhabitants in the building and the building as 2 separate entities is going to be a thing of the past. I mean, these are going to be combined,
Right.
and they got to be different but equal type thing. But and how that's going to show up. So I think when you got companies like Siemens that I think are spotting this and realizing that the space has got to become an experience, right? It's got to be more than just a place you go to work. And I think Siemens is seeing that. I mean, what's your take on it? Why
Well,
else
sure.
would they
And
buy
well,
these?
there's 2 great videos. There's one on this post here, and I think the fit is perfect. It's the vision of Comfy through the Siemens eyes. But we've got that great interview video capture where the Elke Oliver Steffen, the head of Solutions and Services Portfolio of Siemens Building Technology, and Andrew Krukikow from CEO and founder of Comfy discussed this vision of in the enlightening video. And also we have another video with Matthias Rebellius, the CEO of Siemens Global, and he talked about us spending 90% of our, we'll cover a lot of that with Ken St. Clair, of course, but the reality is that we need to make the change right now, here and now, as you become aware of something. It also becomes incumbent upon you that at the moment of this revelation, every chance you can to make the space that you're controlling more occupant friendly and create greater productivity within it, and take it, the advantages of these technologies that are coming down in price and up in capability, because this is where it's going. So when you see leaders like Siemens can globally, influence the world by taking these new acquisitions, J2, Enlightened, now building robotics, and synthesize all those technologies and add it to already existing portfolio, whether it's the Seago or the Talon. I mean, you're talking about advancing, these concepts we're talking about, humanizing buildings and creating, building emotions, which we'll again talk about later. So, but it's really happening. This is a major league
Right.
acquisition. This has major impacts. It means that the distance between that mobile phone and the integration of all the building automation, all the equipment, all coming through, and all that data being filtered out for the most important, captures of it, and having the person that's in that space feel comfortable and feel that, that if they feel the love of the building, they feel like
Right.
whatever. I'm hot, so the heat comes, or cold comes
Right.
on, air conditioning. I'm cold, heat comes on. I'm comfy. I'm saving energy, and I'm giving exact zone presence to the building automation system.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about it, Ken, is that this week all these things sort of hit around the same thing, from Ken Sinclair's theme of automated buildings, and we'll talk to Ken later on about this. But I think at this juncture, the messaging for our community is just be aware that this is getting ready to happen. And probably the best analogy I can give you is, go back to when you're like 12 or 13. All the cute girls are there and all the guys are there, and you feel a little bit like an outsider, and you walk up and they're all talking about the Beatles. And you go, well, I don't see any Beatles around here. They're on the ground or whatever. And they go, because you didn't know that the Beatles were the next big thing, right? So, and I think that's the takeaway right now. Just know that this is getting ready to happen, and we'll keep you updated as it goes through, and we'll hear a lot about this on the show.
But not only the rapidity of it. I mean, we've seen some great examples. Look at the iPhone. I mean, look at the mobile device, smart device. I mean, again, if somebody would have told you 8 years ago or 10 years ago,
Right.
you would be recording live video and sending it to your friend across the world instantaneously, you just said, I don't think so. Or how are you going to do it?
Right.
And then to make a phone that come out and it has, all this technology in it, where it's got incredible capabilities. It's a computer within a computer, and it's got all the bells and whistles of
and especially if you were the guy who was selling the rotary phones going, yeah, I don't think so. Right.
Well,
right. You're the guy making the rotary phones. Yeah, I don't think so.
Well,
so that's kind of where we're at. All right, buddy, what do we have up next, big dog?
Well, we had Kelly acquires MI Controls. Again, major impact, major implications, and then we know why Kelly feels that they've got to make their move, because it's all about fulfilling customers' needs in the 24 hours. So if you order something, you get it to them the next day, it's going to increase your volume, and so it's a very robust concept. And they've recently purchased Control Consultants in Massachusetts, Boston, and now they've got co-locations in Seattle and Portland, Oregon. And the Richard Campbell is on the move. He believes that this strategic move enables Kelly to make their customers happier and provide them products quicker. So well done, Kelly.
Well, a couple of things. So Ken and I now know some millionaires. So we're
Steve. How about
John Donahue, and then Steve Rowe and Dave Ansanti from MI Controls, two fantastic guys. I think one of the things, if you're in this industry, you grow up with people, if you've been around for a while, and it's a great group of people. We got a great group of people in our industry, so couldn't be happier for John, Steve, and Dave. And and in the process, we've gotten to know Richard Campbell and the folks at Kelly. And I tell you what a great organization. And I think their strategy is, and I don't think they mind me sharing this because they shared it with us, is they want to be within 2 shipping days of all their key customers. And I think they do a great job. They've got a niche. They do a very, very valuable function in the industry. And so I'm happy for all of them.
Yeah, it's a good time to make a move. Again, our industry is on changes afoot. You can either get bigger, smaller, niche, or go big or don't go at all. But what Kelly's doing is they're localizing their expertise in strategic areas around the North America country.
Yeah, and they selected 2 really good companies. So congratulations to Kelly, and congratulations.
And they have great capabilities. I got a feeling we're going to see more of them, and I would be surprised if they get involved in control trends.
Well, you know what? Hey, we're not too proud to beg. Richard Campbell, you got all that money. Come be a sponsor of the Control Trends Awards, man. We'll show you a lot of love.
There you go.
John Donahue, you should be a sponsor too, man. All that money, you got to put it someplace. We're a tax deduction.
Yeah.
Steve Rowe, Dave Ansanti. Come on, guys. Let's do it. But, hey, we're going to have a hell of a party in Atlanta. I will tell you that. If you've been to a Control Trends Awards before, whatever money Kenny and I get from the sponsorships, we funnel it right back in. We make sure everybody has a good time. So, all right, buddy.
All right, next up we have Belimo's, talking about a good sponsor. Thanks again, Belimo. You guys have been behind us all the way, helped to scale a lot of walls in the beginning. This particular post is, again, I love Belimo's, the way they put together their social media and their what do you call it, the marketing, but
at least
it's collateral, but it's more because it's training oriented. In other words, they do the marketing very well, but it's kind of subtle. But what they do is they speak softly and carry a big technical stick, a big training stick. So if you watch this video and you see how a fire spreads to a commercial building, and you see what the advantages of using a motorized fire damper versus a non-motorized fire damper, you're probably going to be inclined, if you have an influence decision-making capability inside of a project like this, you're probably going to want to go with those motorized fire dampers, because they will save lives. They will do remarkable things. And this is a visual depiction on how things work, from the fire alarm at the very initial zone where the fire was detected, all the way down to a scenario where the fire is outside the building, but the fresh air intakes are drawing in smoke. So how to prevent that.
The thing about the fire dampers is you're supposed to check them every year, right? But because they only come about if there's a fire.
Right.
So, I mean, it's an overlooked thing, but boy, if there's a fire and you don't have the records on checking those fire dampers, you could be in big trouble. And the other thing we'll say is, if you need to replace any of them, DMS Controls Group or Stromquist and Company, I mean, we stock them. They make a great great fire damper, just like all their dampers are. So I think Belimo's a great choice, but you got to check them, and you got to make sure you have the records that you have been checking them. So
great. And, so we did put the video on there. It's called the Belimo Fire Protection Scenarios. It's actually a European film, but of course it applies to America, and the commercial building is relatively exactly the same. Almost, when I say almost, it's not quite the same. Living in Europe, I know that European buildings are different than American buildings.
But talk about a European video. Now you got me curious, Kenny, because so isn't it the last every other European video we put on for controls manufacturers, there was always a girl in the shower, but there's not a girl in the shower in this one, is there?
You're talking about Thermocon.
Yeah, because when you talk about
BMW not
European
included.
videos, I keep thinking about that video.
That is a good video. That's a very, very. It's probably the raciest video we have had on control trends.
Right.
It came out of Germany. Way to go, Deutschland.
Listen, yeah, well, speaking of that, racy, I mean, we got the big man of Ken Sinclair, man. I think Automated Buildings July issue is up and out. It looks like Ken's teed up and ready to go. So how about introducing him, Kenny?
Love to. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the owner, editor, the one and only Mr. Ken St. Clair. Welcome to the show, Ken.
Welcome, Ken.
Thank you very much, guys.
Well, we just got to start out with the July issue, Ken, and it's like all about emotions. Great July issue. Tell us a little about your editorial.
Good. I was really pleased. It got good coverage. I think I'm becoming the crossover guy. I kind of trying to take our industry and spread it a bit over the IT industry. And I think we're generating some interest of the IT industry, taking a look at what we're doing. And the emotion is probably kind of a common ground that they've had to deal with as well. So it's kind of interesting. So got picked up by some folks that have some large numbers, and so people who haven't ever heard of automated buildings are hearing of it, and also hearing of control trends and some of the great work you're doing. Very much appreciate the video you did, kind of doing the mashup between us and Realcomm. That was great, especially since I missed all of that at Realcomm. So that was really nice to have that all come together virtually, and in one of your presentations, I just tweeted that. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. You're very welcome, Ken. And sort of listen, you're sort of getting a new nickname here. We've known you as Otto or Notre Damus Sinclair, but with your talk about the emotions in the building, and when you talk about digital mindfulness and all. There are a lot of people that are calling you the building whisperer now. If they get a sick building, you know how to come in and talk to them.
Yeah, I've gone so far to the edge. I'm over the edge. Maybe that's what's happening. I'm not sure. It's exciting new stuff. It's definitely an area that I'm not particularly comfortable in, but that's never stopped me before, so it probably won't now. You just charge ahead, and eventually stuff will work out, and it seems that we are creating some interest. The fact that Siemens had acknowledged in their ad campaigns that we do have a strong emotional relationship with our buildings, much stronger than any of us care to admit, and that sort of came out of the Helsinki headshake as well. Was holy cow, this people thing is important. The way we've been building buildings is broken. We basically are always in the business of trying to heal the building and create, undo the damage done by a cost focused buildings. And so there's some real interesting dynamics around. It's sometimes you learn more by stepping out of your industry than you do by just beating your head against it and talking to everybody in the industry. When we keep talking to each other, we keep coming up with the same solution. I think we're at the point in our industry that we need to talk to other folks. The IT industry is interested in talking to us. They see the building industry. They have some of the tools that we need. We're all moving in the direction of moving the information and data out of the clouds, moving it out to the edge. Just finished a piece that just went online where we're floating the idea of taking building emotion, which we defined last in our July issue, and in our August issue, we're floating that out to that will start to self-learn the emotion on the edge. And the reason we can do that is that we have much more powerful processors than we've ever had before. And we have all of these natural language and learning algorithms that can pop up inside of these devices. They don't need to know everything. They just need to know how the door works, or how the window works, or how the VAV box works.
Right. Well, you know, Ken, I want to hop in here for a minute and give our community some stable datum here, because you know what we're talking about. We got into the whole data analytics thing, and the reason we did that was to make our buildings more efficient, and ultimately at the end of the day is to make the tenants more comfortable and more productive. So when you're talking about emotions, I mean, and talking about emotions at the edge, you're talking about things like the sensor knowing if the tenant is comfortable, if it needs something, how many are in the space, how many are out of the space. But you know, and overall, we're just sort of bundling having a building that's a great experience under the humanization or emotional. But it's almost like we're creating an automatic connection between the tenant, and seamless connection between the tenants and the building itself, in such a way that you shouldn't even have to have an interface. So.
You're absolutely right, and that came out of the Helsinki headshake for sure. Is that that we need to use the technology to make the technology invisible. We need to have these devices sense that we're there and take action and basically learn from our actions and basically try to predict a better future. It's an interesting thing. I think if we think about it in something like Google Traffic, where we see and it tells us don't go by that road because it's all blocked up, nobody's moving on it. And it gave us all that great information by just looking at whether the cell phones were moving down the road or not. And so I think there's a whole bunch of relationships like that we can look at technology, use the information technology gives us. We don't have to identify who the people are. We just identify the technology. The technology has an identity of its own. And we don't necessarily have to tie that identity to personal identity, which helps with the privacy. So this was some of the deeper thinking that I don't think I'd thought too much about. And so anytime that we can use technology to detect us, to learn more about us, learn more about our habits automatically, it's a bonus. And these devices are becoming incredibly cheap and incredibly connected, and they only send information to the cloud when it's necessary, which greatly reduces the amount of data transfer. That, and you know, the way we did it before is we kind of collected everything and then tried to decide what we're going to do with it. Now I think it takes on a little more of a focus on the edge bot. In this last article I wrote, Toby, who's our cloud consultant and our contributing editor, I never really understand what Toby's saying until 4 years later, and it's, that's what he was talking about. And anyway, he does an amazing description of basically the movement of data from the cloud to the fog, or some people call it folk computing, out at the edge. And this whole idea that the power will be moved out to these devices, and it becomes not such a incredible task. The scary artificial intelligent thing sort of falls apart because it's just a little edge bot doing its job, which is maybe I'm a doorbell edge bot, and I record continuously video, so I actually catch the person coming up to the door, and when he pushes the button, I capture that, and then I actually send that information up to the cloud. Whereas if we did it before, that when you push the button it took a picture of you, typically you miss the picture of the person. So it's basically, it can combine real time, you can do face identification, all of this kind of stuff right at the device. And that makes the device simpler, but it allows it to build a sense, an emotion. It has an idea what we might want to do. Not sure it did a good job of describing that.
You did a great job of it.
I got to get on this train before it leaves too far down the station, and I won't be able to keep up with it, because this is really good stuff. And the reason why I say that is just in this very short span of time we covered some major developments and revelations. Ken, I think you've been motivated and very excited since you came back from that visit overseas, and how that Nordic experience really has kind of solidified some of the things that you were thinking about. And you saw, like you said, people are listening to what you're saying, and they're giving you great feedback, and it seems like this thing's snowballing. But just to go back and capture some of the information, we started talking about Siemens CEO Matthias Rebellius said something the other day, and it was in your tweet, and that's how I got started on that too, was that we spend 90% of our lives in buildings. And we know that, the old style architecture, when you go to a bank, you want to feel secure. When you go into a hospital, you want to see clean white walls so you feel the sanitation, that you don't have any issues there. And then we saw some interesting developments where you brought gardens inside of buildings, to give people more of a better feeling of contact. It brings some stuff from nature into buildings. We saw waterfalls, and we saw preliminary efforts to try to bring some, maybe not emotions, but to bring some kind of a continuity, so you didn't feel like you were so isolated and stratified inside of a building. And the productivity now has moved into our premier focus. So it's under the microscope, and we're finding out how to make people more productive inside of a space. And of course, it's by the interaction between the people, the data, and the things that control the comfort and lighting inside the space. So I think in a very short period of time, I'm going to say probably like 6 to 9 months, you've captured probably what might be the next trend in our industry that's going to take us to IT and bring us in as good partners, because we saw in Realcomm IT. I don't know if you had a chance yet, Ken, to see the post that went up there with the Microsoft Pavilion, and how you had some big players, Steelcase, Honeywell, some global companies are working with Microsoft Azure, and what they all talk about is data, just data. And I think the fact that you just explained something about data having its own ID, technology has an ID that doesn't have to be included with a person's ID to identify that person with that symptom or with that need for the technology, or the technology that's in use around that person can be extricated from and make it private, so that you're getting the information without scalding the person's privacy. So these are some really heavy duty, topics and themes, but they're all coming together, I think, very well in the direction of your building emotion. And I like the double entendre, where you're building emotion, where emotion is being built by somebody that's responsible for it, to create a sense of emotional tie to the building. So it's time for us to create an emotional sense of our building space. So going over that again, so you see people that maybe architects, engineers, some really brilliant people, instead of making the cheapest, fastest, slickest building they can, cut corners and cut costs at the expense of the occupants. Now, how do you see these guys that are designing buildings take this forward, this concept?
Well, again, there was an architectural firm speaking at the Nordic Smart Building, and they talked about their designs. And I mean, when you're designing for a developer, you're hooped. I mean, this guy's what he really wants you to design is not what anybody in the world ever wants. If you're designing for an owner, occupant, a software company who values their employees, it's a completely different thing. One of the buildings they talked about was a Lego building, and they had to build the whole building out of Lego blocks, and that was more of an emotion than bricks and mortar. This kind of a concept, I think we can at least achieve a portion of it if we identify building emotion as a fabric. It's just like, basically, what is the feeling? What is the feeling of the habitation in that building? How can we extract it? And whether we do that with an app that asks, or whether we collect information, or whether we actually look at the people with video. And there was a lot of talk about that, as well as how powerful the video is becoming at evaluating people's emotions. I think you've probably seen that, where video, basically the combination of video and analytics in an EdgeBot, we can basically tell you if 53% of the people are neutral, 10% of them were upset, and other ones were happy, and So you can actually pick that out from facial things, doing video analytics, running AI on these things, then return the information. Stuff like that is extremely easy to do in a edge bot. And
No,
so
Ken, I don't want to interrupt you for long, but in the explanation you just did, when you do this video analysis of people, are you doing it for their general, a general analysis, or is this for in a particular application where it's important to monitor a person's face, and then from there you can tell if they're happy or not, and being happy or upset, and the 10%, in what regard is that? Like they might go off and beat up their neighbor, or they might be leave the office because they're uncomfortable and they might want to go outside, or they might quit work altogether, throw their legs up on the desk and say, screw this. I don't know what it is, but I just don't feel comfortable with it. I mean, I'm not sure how to, with that, when you do that video analysis of people, where is that going to? What application?
The answer is yes to all of those applications. Yeah. But the big one that who's probably leading it is the folks that are tagged with the task of terrorist control. How are you going to look at 5,000 people and even just sense the attitude of the crowd? Can you imagine how valuable that is to see the crowd is they're getting to the
agitated
point.
Or whatever.
Be agitated.
Oh, yeah. Well,
right. So being able to do that. So that's the more sophisticated use of it. And again, we don't have a privacy issue there, because if you don't want to be on that camera, you probably shouldn't be in that place. So
right. Well, again, I want to hop on too, because as usual, you are just hitting on some incredible stuff. So, if you think about it, because the other thing, Kenny, I can think of with this would be, you probably wouldn't take too much in artificial intelligence to figure out if people are too hot or too cold, right? You get a certain, we'll figure all that out. So, again, but I think at the end of the day, the reason people are doing this and what our community, I think, needs to understand is this is coming. And the reason you're doing it for business reasons, right? If you own business property, real estate, you're competing against other people. And I think the other variable that's come along now is the millennials are not going to stand for having to work. And, they have a choice between working over here in a really nice space or working with all this happening automatically and emotionally sensitive building. That's where they're going to go versus, so they're going to use it for recruiting. And I think once they really grasp the concepts, think about the money. You can almost say this is like interior decorating, right? Because the money that law firms or big Fortune 100s, spend on office furniture or office space to create that environment. And that's just stuff we sit on or write on. And what we're really talking about is we're talking about interiorly decorating the space in such a way that it's completely seamless and your needs are met without you even having to ask. And I think as people get hold of that and start to market that, then it's going to cycle back down to our community where our integrators and our listeners are going to be people going, well, how are you at evaluating a building on its emotional relevance or its emotional sensitivity? So, I think that's where it sort of comes back to our folks. This is coming, and we're the ones that are going to connect all this stuff together. So you just have to understand that this is a real concept.
Well, it certainly is coming. And just I'm going to borrow one more interruption here. My last interrupt card. I just throw it. The fact that Siemens buys Comfy Building Robotics, buys Enlightened, which is an advanced lighting schema that has sensors that are sophisticated beyond belief in the ballast, and then buys J2 Innovation, which is going to be the people that can write the software and create these amazing algorithms, artificial intelligent leads, and whatever. We're seeing not only we catch it on, but we're seeing how it gets done, what the technology, and if you can't do it internally, how you're going to be able to leapfrog and get it is through acquisitions. And then the concept that you said earlier, Ken, too, that deserves a second note, is that you said that we used to collect data and then have this big puddle of fishbowl of data, and then you're saying like, okay, find this, and we thought the solution was queries, and of course it is, and Haytag, Project Haystack and Haystack tagging, of course, it's better at the beginning, but if you had to do it at any time in the game, that's the best semantics to use, but we're going to see the things are going to be isolated by need. Data is going to become streamed by its importance and relevance to an application. And, so then you're going to see, there won't be this big puddles of data and this gigantic, I'm sure the cloud people will still have reason to collect all the data all the time, and people like Echolyrhythm that do, that have this ability to do like, engine, verification and
AI learning
optimization.
algorithms.
Yeah, so that's going to happen too. But for our practical purposes, for us inside of the building space, we're seeing Siemens and Acuity with their Distech line really and truly bring all those components together. They're all neighboring each other now, and you're going to see fabulous user interfaces, fabulous interaction of data, fabulous sensory contact between the building automation, and the person, and actually delivered. What you're saying is a great place to be, where you're happy, and the most productive person you could be that day. All right. And end of disruption.
No, Kenny, your disruptions are great. I mean, you're like artificial intelligence coming into the building,
Oh yeah.
into the conversation. So
What did Ken say? Fantastic.
Okay, well, the other thing I'd like to hold is that we should chat about is that we have all been part of this evolve. We basically have evolved this emotion in the building. We've all been fans of Comfy for 4 or 5 years, and I think we were all sad when Lindsay left and she went to WeWork for Greater Goals, a company that is basically redefining how a lot of this stuff comes together as well. And so we had that company. We were early to work with J2 and Haystack. I mean, they're basically founders, certainly carriers on their back of Haystack, and I think often of their entertaining the farmer thing they did in Chattanooga, which was so much fun, and how they, in their own way, invoked emotion into the buildings, and basically they made the tie that emotion is tied to natural language being Haystack tagging. We kind of worked through that, and then I went to Light Fair in San Diego, and I started the lighting people. I think they made the giant leap quicker than anybody, because they started getting into being able to control the color of light and getting into circadian cycles and all of that, things that really do affect people. And then I think a bit the war was on is the lighting companies always used to worry about protocols, who was going to win, but then we had a bigger war, is the lighting folks going to control. And then we saw big lighting folks like Acuity buying Distech, and then we get a crossover of Siemens buying Enlightened. So we're starting to see, obviously, the lighting is a component. And in my this article that just went on a few days ago with the pushing the emotion out to the edge bots, I basically go through that set the history of all of these people, and basically link back to stuff on automated buildings 3 and 4 years ago. We were talking about this stuff, and I also use that as a preface in why am I talking about all this. I'm just trying to tell you that because I'm talking funny now, it may not sound so funny in 3 or 4 years. This whole idea of pushing the intelligence out to the edge bots, and there's lots of folks working on that. Certainly contemporary controls with their Raspberry combination of their boards. They're getting those things out.
Ken, let me ask you a question real quick about the edge bots, because like Alper, has got an edge controller. LinkSpring's got edge controllers. Contemporary Controls has edge controllers. What is the difference between an edge controller and an edge bot? And does anybody have an edge bot yet?
Yeah, I don't think anybody has an edge bot yet. I would say what we've got is a edge controller would be like Alpers or like contemporary controls, basically running a Raspberry or these new microcomputers. And the issue with the new microcomputers is they're just capable to do so much more, and they're also inherently connected. So they're like cell phones. The connection is assumed. But with that, then the next level that's coming right quickly on that is that then you load up Microsoft self-learning algorithms and Amazon speech things, and all of a sudden this device starts talking to you. somewhere in my blurry mind where it starts to talk to you in natural language and it starts to self-learn, it changes to a bot.
So will that start at the home first then? Because it seems like the home is already, by that definition, it seems like you've already got some home devices, like you talked about the doorbell from hell. So are we going to see that come through the home market first and then to the building, like pretty much everything else?
I like the simplest bots, I guess, is we've got these satisfaction bots that are appearing in buildings where they do like a survey. Are you happy, sad, indifferent? You touch 4 buttons, or alternately you can talk to it, or there's a whole thing. The voice, I think, is going to become the cheapest interface going, and because it doesn't take a touch screen, it doesn't take buttons. It's so almost everything will talk to you if you've got the time to talk to it. So that's, and it's the learn set. If it's a door or it's a window or if it's the temperature, I mean, there's only 50 or 100 words that it needs to know. I mean, it's not like it has to learn 50,000 words to have an intelligent conversation with you. So I think that's where I sort of see this evolving, and I think it's going to evolve rapidly. The other thing is we have an article, an interview from a company called Temboo, T-E-M-B-O-O, Temboo, I guess you'd say, and they're basically a software platform. And I started poking around their site, and their approach is pretty interesting. So what they wanted to do is, if you wanted to do something, you went through their site, it helped you set it up, it gave you a selection of hardware, basically edge bots that you would want to use, and you chose your edge bots. And what blew me away is their preferred edge bot was made by Samsung.
Huh.
And who knew Samsung had a little controller with I/O on it and everything like that?
Well, they had the stuff they put in the TV sets that would spy on you, so it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what it is. It's the card that goes in the washing machine and goes in all of the Samsung things. They're committed by 2020 to have all of their devices talking.
Wow.
Yeah, like there's stuff moving there fast too. I think we need to, like I'm an old guy just trying to catch up with all this stuff, but somebody has to be on that full time just watching what developments are going to radically change us.
To your point, remember how Eric, what was it about 2013, social media really sprung loose and everybody had to have a social media coordinator.
Right.
Remember that? I mean, and they literally hired people, and we interviewed several. We hired the person responsible for marketing collateral, social media, for at least 10 companies or so. Well, I see what you're saying now, Ken, is they're going to have somebody inside of probably every large corporation that's going to be the innovation manager or the technology coordinator or something. Somebody has the job every day to read all the dang posts and get on 1,000 sites a week and find out where the technologies are coming from. Because imagine if you're like Samsung and you've got a corner of the world where it's your market, so you got the Pacific Rim, and you're just pumping this stuff out. And in North America, we're kind of hep, and Europe is kind of hep. So you get some cross pollination. You go to Europe, see the Nordic stuff, and really get some good information, and share it or your site with them, so they're getting some. But there could be somebody out there really and truly developing the next great. I don't want to say what you used the phrase this week, Eric, roadkill. But some of this old technology that we're living on and that we rely on and that is important to us economically is going to wind up being roadkill. It's going to be like, what happened to it? All of a sudden, there's no blood in it anymore, and it's dead on the side because this technology's ran it over.
Well, you think about it, Kenny. I mean, if Samsung's got all this other stuff talking by 2020, I mean, getting a couple of sensors in a building to talk, and a building automation system seems like it'd be pretty damn easy. So maybe a prediction right now is Samsung's the next big player in smart building controls by 2020.
And taking a very low profile, quiet approach.
Yeah.
I know in some discussions, actually quite a while back, it was last year, I guess, I had with Trevor Palmer when he went from Distech over to Acuity. And we had a really good conversation one day, and we were talking about the lighting folks taking over, being the network providers. And because he was on both sides of the fence, Distech and Acuity, he really had some good insight into that. And he said that it's probably going to follow the lighting, because the lighting will always need power. And so therefore, these edge bots they probably want to be powered from permanent power, from the building power. So the logical thing is that they're easy to put inside light fixtures. They're just a little electronic thing. But what they'll do is they will reach out Wi-Fi and pick up the box, the closest box. They will auto discover the closest box and set up the relationship. So you're kind of starting to see how that builds. So there's my edge bot hanging in a light fixture. And now the edge bot starts to, I get the deluxe model has a motion control, and it starts to look at the people or listen to the people, or like even listening is an interesting thing. Actually, one of the thermostats that you can talk to, actually one of the detections of the presence of people is it just listens for sound. If there's noise going on there, there's probably people around, and especially if it kind of comes and goes. So a little bit of an algorithm. So a lot of things that are kind of complicated get quite simple when you start thinking more like people. This whole technology to try and humanize. There's just some great quotes here. I'd get too lost trying to find them. You know what it's like to try and read automated buildings. It's like. Anyway, but there's
easy.
There's some quotes there about that we don't need more technology. We just simply need to humanize the technology we have, and I think that's the essence of it. And that's a company out of Singapore called Unified Box, and they're doing some pretty interesting stuff. So what they're doing is they're doing the natural language, and they convert it to a text, and then they send the text to your device. So you'd say, turn up the temperature. They'd say, temperature, go to haystack tagging, temperature such and such up. Then they would text that to the device, and the devices have it sitting there. Oh, up, there we go. So a different way of thinking of it, where we used to send bits and zeros and stuff like that. We send texts so we can, I think you both got either Googles or Echoes, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but you can actually go and see all of your commands, right? When you look at it, you actually see all the commands that you've given it and the reactions it's taken. So that's pretty interesting. So all of a sudden, a whole bunch of people are able to sort this out. People that have the skills we have, because that's what we've been doing all our life, except we've been working at a much more complex level. We've been working at Niagara framework, or and I think getting this closer to a human language, which we're able to do, and again, I'm just talking funny now, but it's in 3 or 4 years, I think it'll be less funny. Maybe.
Well, no, I think you're right on it, and I'm wondering if Kenny, you probably remember this. There was a product, and Ken, you might remember too, maybe a company called Solidyne back in this is back in the 80s.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And remember, you could talk to that to program it.
Yeah.
Push a button and you program it. So you talk about the Niagara framework being complicated if you don't know how to do it already. I mean, is it going to literally get to the point where somebody can say, I want the room to do this, this, and this, and all of a sudden that gets, like you said, instead of texted, it gets written into a language, and then it does it. It's
absolutely certain. I mean, it's already been done. And the things that they had to do to create the blue that beat the greatest thinkers in the world, and the chess players so it learned by itself. In other words, it played itself. I mean, the thing just kept going until it achieved total clarity on every possible move, and so that when you say something, I think there's several things, and I think Treese had a post on it once too, about the company that was trying to be take all the languages in the world and then make them so that you not only could you translate between languages, but then they would translate into a common code. So everybody, and it would be word by word, the most common words. But like we were saying about what was the language that doesn't have the word no in it, the most common English word said the most on the globe is the word no, no. And then in certain countries and certain cultures, they don't have a word for no. This, you know, so I mean, so when you think about the disparity of context there, you know, they have some way to say I don't want it, or not for me, or something, or you know, decline, but they don't say no. So when you get into these kind of, you know, heady talks where artificial intelligence is going to be one day able to, you know, assimilate all of the human intelligence, it's very possible because you know, all these big guys like who are the people that came out not too long ago and warned the world that artificial intelligence, we better stop right now.
Elon Musk
Yeah,
and
there was
Jeff
3 or
Bezos.
4 of them. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so because I mean, if these guys are afraid of it, then it means it's quite possible that in the wrong hands, this technology could be either number one, go on its own way. And there's a couple of great books. If we want to keep talking about this, I actually have to look them up. But it's all about a computer. I mean, look at and then you got the last thing. Dan Brown's latest novel is about that, where the computer takes the artificial intelligence as a computer, figures out the optimal outcome for a human instance. You know, how to get the most viewers to watch this message. So it creates a scheme, pits good people against bad people, and gets investigators involved that they know will find these clues and whatever, but it's all being done by a computer, you know, artificial intelligence. And then at the end of it, because he knew it was a villain, because it went outside of its own parameters, it shut itself down permanently. It killed itself. I hope I didn't ruin the book for everybody, but you know, basically that's a synopsis. But I mean, that's how far this has been. You know, the conversation is already out there. You know.
Well, it's yeah.
Well, and to that, to add clarity to that, I am going to die, but not today.
Me too. I second that.
Nice. So watch this, Ken Sinclair. So you know the reason those languages don't have the word no in it, Kenny, is because the word no is a phonological ambiguity, meaning your mind can interpret it more than one way. So back when I was
Certainly
dating
in
girls,
English.
they'd say no. I say, you mean no, like we're not going to do this, or no, like nobody has to know about it.
Good one. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. I think there's another things going on is that the whole social connectiveness of the world in the younger people, you know, the speed at which YouTube can carry concepts, the amount of English language, like we're slowly winning over the universal languages because of social media, and because basically the internet and a lot of social medias use English languages. And so for the young ones, they're learning this anyway. So you know, LOL is LOL in all languages, and of course the wide use of emojis is another thing too. So we're starting to see a sharp direction away from our languages and the structured languages, and I think that's why we are probably able to go more with trying to get emotion. We can actually start sensing emotion. Actually, we didn't even talk about voice. Of course, voice. Think, oh, I had another one. My credit card got compromised in Iceland, and so I phoned and I was trying to get that straightened out, which they were able to straighten out without giving me a new card, which is interesting. But when he was finished, he said, "May I take a voice print?" And I said, "What?" And I said, "Yes. What's that for? All about?" He says, "Next time you phone in, we will put your voice print that you're talking to today and your voice print there, and if they kind of match pretty close, then that's another test for us to know that you're you." So I'd never even heard of a voice print, but there you go. My credit card company has a voice print of me. But anyway, with voice prints and certainly both Amazon Echo and Google, they have the ability to learn. In fact, they want you to speak words so we understand how you say words, so we can decipher your accent and work all those details out. So they obviously are voice printing as well. So this is like a whole technology we haven't even talked about. But again, it's a technology that is not so intrusive. So when you walk in, when I ask the Echo to do something, or the Google Home, it recognizes my voice and it does something. If my wife asks, does something completely different if she asks, because that's what she wants. She wants something different done. So this, you can starting to see this learning. The fellow from Amazon who did a presentation in Helsinki, he you know, he went through this, and it is moving out of the home into the businesses. One of the most common things right now is it's an extra set of hands. You're working in a process, you know, hey, Google, set a timer 10 minutes. You know, I don't have to touch anything. So it sets it, bump, okay, and I can keep working. Or, you know, what is the shelf life of a salmon? And it can tell me that. Or a conversion, actually, how many kilograms, and, you know, bump, okay. So I can get information without stopping doing what I'm doing. So it allows me to multiplex. But that's just the beginning of it. When you couple that with artificial, and not, I don't like the word artificial intelligence, I like the word self-learning, and you put it with self-learning algorithms. And because the self-learning algorithms, when they're pushed out to an edge bot, they don't have to be that complex. I mean, because they only have to do one task. And so I can have a bunch of words, I can have the speech recognition. I just load down portions of the file. I don't have to have the whole server side thing of Amazon Echo and Google Home running in this small device. I just need little bits of it.
Well, Ken, I think you're giving a blueprint. If any of our control manufacturers are paying attention, I think you're giving them a great blueprint to what to put on the controllers going forward, because it sure sounds to me like the days of going up to a thermostat and raising and lowering it are numbered. And it sure seems to me like even having to speak whether you're too hot or too cold with, you know, the voice and the face recognition. So, you know, it seems like if you're manufacturing products, at least our traditional folks, you got to be paying attention. And, you know, Kenny and I have talked a lot about, because there's so many brilliant people in the industry right now, but if you didn't have legacy systems to contend with and you were just going to build something from scratch right now. And it's funny because, you know, 6 months ago, or even before this conversation, I would have said, well, you know, you built what EasyIO built, or Proton Optergy, or even what KMC's doing. But after this conversation, I'm kind of going, no, you wouldn't even do that. You'd be talking to Samsung, getting that technology, and you'd be completely redoing, you know, how you're, and I won't even call them controllers or sensors. It's almost beyond that. It's, but it just seems like all these great technologies have the potential to get leapfrogged very, very quickly. And it might be a player from the outside, Kenny, coming in, a Samsung or somebody.
You know, Ken, you did a good job again, of explaining something too, because I think when we talk like this, you know, there's this futuristic aspect to it, and not like an artificial intelligence, you know, and stuff like that. I mean, because of the preferences, but these are all layers. And so when technology comes out and it's a layer, and it's how we have the human face, that layer can change without much. I mean, it can always get better and utilize greater technology. But the way, you know, this guy, you know, what's his name from ESI, Paul Oswald, and you know, whenever you start getting too far above in the air, he always grounds you with something like, you know, who's going to fix the belts, you know. But, you know, when we talk about this, how do we maintain a couple of things, and that is uninterrupted power? How do we maintain control over equipment that if, God forbid, something happens and all these fabulous technologies that are based on the internet, based on wireless technology, and based on router connectivity, and based on internal networks, should ever be interrupted or obliterated by some unknown entity, what do we do next? So, I mean, when we have these things, I think we really have to reserve maybe like 15% deposit on old technology that gives us repeatability, sustainability, survivability, and perpetual, you know, motion. I mean, because, you know, the more I think about this, you guys said that voice activated, that they're saying voice activated weapons are going to be, you know, gun safeties. You know, it's going to be, the smart gun is going to solve America's gun problem. You know, I just had to look and see. So the voice activated safety, you know, so, I mean, but
wow,
it's there, man. So what happens, you know, in a building that's so super slick, it's got everything, it's power over the internet, Ethernet. It's got the Johnson battery that's the size of a car. It's got all kinds of sustainable energy. It's got wind turbines. It's got photovoltaic. It's got the latest and greatest abilities to absorb energy from the atmosphere. And then, you know, it goes into the building and everything's being controlled. Everything's hunky-dory. We got a program from outside, the perfect day in California. We can actually record that on our phone, bring it in, connect it to our automation system, and it brings the lights to the exact level, brings the noise to that level. We're feeling really good emotionally. And then all of a sudden, something happens, earthquake, blah, 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 whatever, you know. I'm not only a doomsday guy. I'm just saying, though, at one point, I think, you know, we always have to, you know, go back one step or something and make sure we're connected to reality and point that, you know, it's not magic.
Well, let's get back to connected to reality. I think you're right, Kenny. Let's get back to connecting to reality real quick, because Ken, you are going to be doing your thing in AHR in Atlanta coming up. And if you guys are good, why don't we sort of cycle over to that part of the conversation now, Ken? Because I think you're going to be covering some of this, aren't you? And you got your digital humanization psychology guy coming in and everything else, right?
Yeah, Lawrence is going to come out from digital mindfulness, and he's basically going to do the same presentation he did in Helsinki, which I was quite impressed with. And then I'm going to heckle him while he's doing that, and then we're going to open it up to
Canadian style.
Yeah, that's right, to a discussion. And I think that is a good good direction. And we're going to take the whole building emotion theme, and that's going to be probably what we're going to build on. It's also this is kind of interesting. It's our 20th year of putting on education sessions for AHR. We started in Dallas in 2000. And they asked us if we could come down, and we just started automated buildings, and they asked if we could come down and do an education session. And I wasn't sure what I was doing, and they weren't sure what I was doing. They wanted me to talk badly about the home, and I said I didn't really know much about that market. I was more into what buildings were about. So we talked about that, and it was an amazing. That a lot of ways was the start of automated buildings, because kind of fell out of the sky, as I usually do. And basically the fact I wasn't attached to any major manufacturer or any major publication confused the heck out of everybody. They kept asking me that question. I didn't even understand. They're like, well, what publication are you with? And automated buildings. No, but who owns you, you know? Like, just me, just Jane. You know? So this whole working model was quite different than they'd ever seen before. And once they kind of found out that my intentions were honorable, and I just wanted to help educate folks. Anyway, so that was 20 years ago. So here we are back. So we've gone all the way from, a whole bunch of protocol wars and bits and pieces. And now we're into emotion and pushing emotion out to the edge bots. So we're going to kind of do one presentation on that. I don't know if you've seen this evolutionary thing that we created, just bundling up 20 years of articles and stuff on automated buildings.
Yeah.
Flyover. Yeah. Okay. So we'll basically speak off of that. So that's one of the sessions we're doing. We've got the digital mindfulness session. We've got BAS 101, which our good friend Scott Bowen's going to do. And what else we got going? Scott Cochran and I are going to talk about the future of the world in our opening remarks. So that'll be kind of funny, and how some of this stuff is coming together. So it should be fun. And I don't know, let folks get a hit at me kind of thing. I think some of them are, some of the traditionals are aghast at what I'm talking about. So
well, Ken, you know what? Keep doing what you're doing, because as one of my teachers once said, nothing's obvious to the uninformed. And you know what? It's as we've talked about with you on this show before, it's not that we haven't seen change before, because we all have lived with change, but I don't think any of us have seen the rate at which change is happening. And that requires a different set of skills. And part of it is paying attention, and part of it is getting the wheat from the chaff, right? Because some of this stuff it's here today and gone 2 seconds later, and some of it's going to be around for a while, and that's what makes it tricky. So keep doing what you're doing, and happy 20 years to you, and happy 20 years to AHR.
It's really interesting. I was looking at the Realcomm IBCOM and the Realcomm 20. So isn't that amazing? Two prophets emerged just about the same time there. You had Jim Young over there at Realcomm and Ken St. Clair. Because I'm telling you, right there, if you took the collective wisdoms and the collective tracking that you all did from two different perspectives, and you merged now almost at the same damn bullseye as far as bringing it all together. Jim Young had to literally hand carry everybody on his shoulder to some enlightened state on what the smart connected building looked like. And you basically kept notes, and you and Jane basically documented the evolution of an industry. And that tool that you're talking about is a very, very nice, it's one of the fun things to look at of our industry. It's one of the best products probably ever done, where it shows the collective history and all just the byte, digital size. It was very appealing eye-wise, for people like to look at stuff. It's very interesting, but it's very full of information that's relevant. I mean, that is a true archival depiction of the evolution of our industry just by articles and pictures, and that's really cool. And then I wanted to do one more steal on what you said about AHR and the news and how it's exciting. And we have to make a plug for Control Trends about this time, because we are going to have Ken St. Clair at the Control Trends in some capacity, maybe a couple capacities. We're looking forward to the Control Trends Hall of Fame. And if anybody out there has some good ideas on who really was a stalwart in the industry and did some of the things that Werner Buck did as far as creating a paradigm shift in actuation for our industry, and then the fathers of BACnet, both Hans Kranz from Germany and Mike Newman from America, and the guy from NIST, that came together and put it all out there. And that's one of the standards that basically put order into a chaotic industry at right about the time it needed it. Wouldn't you say, Ken?
That's for sure. I'm just back to the Jim Young reference. Jim and I have often got together and we talk and we say, what are we doing wrong? We've been at this for 20 years and they still don't get it. We're not very effective at doing what it is we're doing. And I think that is true, that always amazes me is that I'll be bantering on or think I've come up with a new title, and I go back and I used it 15 years ago, exact same title.
I hate when that happens.
Yeah, and the words aren't even all that different. It's just like, but I still didn't achieve what I had in my mind, or the world didn't. And we keep seeming, a lot of the things that I talk about seem to be coming closer to happening. Title.
So much as always, always insightful. And this conversation could go on for a really, really long time. And if we didn't have to cut the rest of the show, we keep it going. But can we get you to come back? We got August coming up next month, and let's keep the conversation going, and maybe bring some of your buddies along, like Jim Young or Lawrence. It'd be great. I'd love to do maybe a four-way conversation with you and Lawrence, and we can.
I'd like that if you can work that in. That would be great. Lawrence adds a different perspective. It's just he's not just calling out for us as an industry to move more to this humanization. He's asking you, are you happy? Are you happy with the way you interface with technology?
Yeah.
You have to basically, is the phone running your life, or are you running the phone's life? And just take control of this stuff. And it's more from a psychological point of view. And this whole concept of mindfulness, I think he was early to market with it, and I think he's starting to get it. Julie, is that correct? Julie, that you had speaking,
yeah.
She had grasped exactly what he was talking about. In fact, it sounded like that's
right.
That
yeah. I want to segue into that, because you bring up a good point. Because one of the posts on Control Trends was an interview that we did with Julie Miner from Cone Resnick, and just if you don't think this stuff is real, that what Ken's talking about. I mean, after reading Ken's article and interviewing her, and Cone Resnick is basically a consultant. They help people implement things and have their real estate assets be more valuable. They do everything, from your taxes to how you're spending money. But the big thing that her whole division is all about having the space become the experience, right? So if you start, and they've been doing that for a while. And you start thinking about, Ken's vision of technology and the fact that they're already doing this. Those two got to marry up. So well done, Ken Sinclair, and you and Julie. Maybe we get you two guys on the show together too. That'd be a fun one too.
Actually, I mentioned I reached out to Julie to try and get her to share some of her thoughts in our August issue. I'm not sure if she'll have time to do that, but that would be great. So there's a lot of synergies moving around. It's early days, and we're still talking funny, but if you go back and take a look at how funny stuff we talked about actually go back on the timeline and look in 2008 and see those two young men that started Control Trends. That's pretty funny. What happened
Now
to you
they're
guys?
old. Yeah, well, man,
Stress.
it's a tough way to have fun. But I tell you what, check out Ken Sinclair, the Prophet, automatedbuildings.com. And listen, Ken, you know what? In the spirit of things, I want to give you a virtual hug. All right, there you go. You're great.
Man hug. Man
See
hug.
Ken on the street, give him a hug, okay? And great stuff as always, my good friend. You take care, and automatedbuildings.com. All right, man, great stuff from Ken Sinclair as always, Kenny.
Yeah, well, and and then our next post, Eric, is just kind of a piggyback or a back cart to it or side cart. But Julie Miner, you did a great interview with her, and boy, does that go time. I mean, you really made a good point. That was a great post. You had two great posts, one after another, because you were getting into you were sharing your thoughts on the relevancy and the new trend, and you believe that we're square dead center in a trend that's we watched it from its origin, and now it's starting to wax and it's starting to spread into other industries and catch people's attention. And we're seeing words that we kind of helped get started being repeated and show up in different publications or whatever. But and of course, to Ken Sinclair's credit, he was the one that germinated the whole concept to us.
Well, you're onto something. You got two different people from two different walks of life that don't even know each other that are coming to the same sorts of conclusions. And
Right.
and it's a good point, Kenny, because we get bombarded with all kinds of information every day, and what we basically try to do is we try to cultivate information and videos and trends that we think could have a direct effect on our community, so that we really want our community to be informed and sort of know what's going on.
Yeah, and again, the next post after that, Microsoft playing in the smart building space. So the curation continues with your, you've seen companies. I'm just going to read what you wrote because I thought it was very good, and it's already got a comment on there that you've seen companies like Intel, Dell, Google, and others showing up more and more at meetings like Realcomm, IBCon, and wondered what will be the impact and effect they will have on the smart building controls world that we live in, that we know. And I liked your terminology. Is the or these players from Silicon Valley they have nefarious motives? Nefarious.
I did that for you, buddy. That was my vocab word for you.
On that. Will they leave the players in the Control Trends community as roadkill? And that's pretty ferocious.
That was for your brother, Tommy.
Okay. But you know what? Well, as we see, the video kind of diffuses the realities that we have, and how we need to really and truly, begin to become more, show more, understand what realities are and what threats are, and what actually, if you move to the side, lateral preposition or reposition, and having IT come into our world could be the next great wave of success that you could have within your existing customer base, because IT is not going to go away. IT will replace a dormant, inactive person that doesn't want to upgrade a building to its to get that data out of the building and into an analytic program where it belongs, and to increase again the comfort and productivity of people in the buildings that they're spending 90% of their lives in. My gosh, meine Güte.
Well, Ken, and I got to tell you, man, you did a great job, because Ken did an interview. You got to see the video. Ken basically went around. He tracked down the head of Microsoft that was there, and the Microsoft was your platform. And Ken went from there and interviewed different people using this platform in different ways. But Ken, I got to ask you, the one that surprised me, and I don't know the implications, was Honeywell. You interviewed the guy from Honeywell, and Honeywell's using it. So
sure, but then he just let it out. He said, "Look, this is a situation in our in the point of our industry where collaboration is the greatest tool we have available. Instead of everybody trying to create their own one-off version and their own proprietary version, if you could take a platform that's neutral and friendly and already done, and you can apply what you need to add to it, and it brings another product that you can offer immediately to a market in need of it." So he gives a couple. He talked about a security application where Honeywell could take information, from let's say behind the curtains and bring it out to the front of the curtain. So they have all this installed equipment, and if they take that information, there's just so much data there that it can become useful, and it's all about value added. So the people that use Honeywell products and use their security systems now can take this installed, leverage their equipment, leverage their components, leverage their controllers, leverage the data to get better, happier, safer lives. So, I mean, my gosh,
Yeah.
it's a no-brainer. But to hear two big powerhouses meet and like you say, throw down the swords, throw down the shields. Let's take what you do best and what I do best. Let's collaborate. Let's get this done, and we both enjoy a prosperous outcome.
No, I think it's really cool. It's really cool. So I think we're going to see more and more of that. And it sort of gets back to me. I think it gets back to the sort of the theme of this week about the humanization of the buildings, because you got to have the data and you got to have the platform to be able to do all this stuff. So I think we're seeing all the players are making their own way to that conclusion and coming up with their versions of those solutions. I think we'll see more and more of that. And I guess, Kenny, gets back to how does it transfer back to the people that listen to us, our integrators, the HVAC controls mechanics, and all. And I say, and I'll get your opinion on it this time, just something you want to be aware of. You don't want to be the 10 or 12-year-old kid that's showing up at the dance and thinking Beatles are bugs that walk on the floor and not the greatest rock and roll group of all time.
Which is true. I mean, that's and I think that may have actually happened. The first time I heard of Beatles, I did not understand what they were, and and then when I saw them, I was overwhelmed.
Right.
It became an instant and permanent Beatles fan. But some of the things that we kicked around during the show, this episode has been like, instead of making humans more technically competent or advanced, make technology more humans. I mean, we're seeing juxtapositioning of terms that used to be mean like humans, digitalization, buildings, emotion. I mean, what's going on? I mean, we're mixing and mashing, and coming up with these terms that now are implying that we've gone to another level of capabilities. That if you can make a building emotionally appealing, that people love to go to work. My goodness, there's a magic there. They're going to be more productive. They're going to come to work. They're going to prefer to work in that building and prefer to work for that particular employer, because they have that, they've taken care of these issues that impede on productivity and impede on happiness and whatever. So if we can define things, and technology helps us do that, and we're the possessors of that technology. I mean, we're actually, to me, it reminds me of fuel. Data is fuel. It's the new currency. It's the new fuel. We sit on a lot of data. IT wants us to cooperate with them and give up that data, make sure that we're using haystack and semantics that make tagging and make queries easier, so that they can get this data that they want in particular out. And like we said, instead of creating big blobs of data and they have to go to the cloud, let it digest and sort itself out for hours or days or weeks, we're going to take the exact data we need, and we're going to help present that in the most the best networkable way into these controllers. And as Ken mentioned, these edge bots, I haven't seen an edge bot yet, but we certainly know a lot of manufacturers that focus now on the edge. With BASSG, Alper out there,
I bet Lim's probably creating Lim Hoon Chop from EZO is probably creating one right now. He's going to listen to this show, and next thing you know, he's going to.
They already have it. That FT04.
No, I know he's got that. But Ken's criteria with that was that you would be able to
Oh yeah,
you'll have to chip in and all that in before you know it. So
and then Lindspring has an edge controller, and then you got Edge 10. You got the new
from Niagara. Yeah,
Niagara's coming out. So I mean, we're really seeing this coming. It's not gibberish.
But the distinction is from edge controller, because you got people that have that, which is new, and now it's going to be an edge bot controller. And to me, if understanding Ken Sinclair, what's going to make it a bot is you're going to have the smart analytics on the edge, but you're also going to be able to talk to it. It's going to be you're either going to be able to talk to it, or it's going to be able to use. You can be able to communicate to it without having to touch it or type anything.
Exactly. I wrote that down because I'd never heard. EdgeBot was brand new to me today, and I love it. And then you of course took us off track.
Stephen King is coming out with a new book called the Revenge of the Killer Doorknob EdgeBot. So yeah, it's going to happen, baby. It's going to. Ken, we have one more post. Let's hit that real quick, and we got to hop off, man. We've been rocking.
Yep, it's RealCom 20 IBCon conference live interview with Rajavel Subramanian and Facilio, and I'll tell you that's just one syllable after another there. But Raj was a very, very smart guy, and he made a great impression. And he corrected me when I mispronounced his name then, and I'm sure he's going to correct me when he hears me mispronounce it again.
You should just come on this show so he can do it in person.
Right, but these guys are new to the North American market. We sat there and we had a great time. We were at the product launch. The launch pad at the RealCom IBCon at the product launch is a concept that they have where they bring new products and new solutions to North America at this launch pad forum. and we get to say, hey, tell us what you're doing. But they're looking for in the North America market to seek and develop a channel with Niagara Partners, because they have a Niagara module that's already made for people that Niagara Partners will be able to use instantly or immediately. And Facilio offers a great facility management product for buildings in the 50,000 to 100,000 square foot range. It creates optimal efficiency for the C-suite by visualizing data in real time for a multitude of applications, including fault diagnostics, fault detections, and generating work orders.
Sounds to me like it's emotional. I mean, there were so many of those people. That's one takeaway. We got a bunch more interviews coming from that. There were so many people that are playing in that space now. Man, it didn't even exist 5 years ago, right? And I mean, there's so many players now that we met. I mean, and we knew a couple of them from even a couple of years ago, but I was just overwhelmed with how many of those people were showing up.
And the movements, yeah. I mean, look at Candy. We met Candy out there at Realcomm, didn't we?
Yeah.
And now they just got bought. They were bought by Altair.
Yeah.
So there's another. I mean,
another acquisition, man.
Yeah.
Another acquisition. All right, buddy. Well, listen, man, I'm getting all emotional from all this talk, and I'm feeling kind of bad about our building at work. Maybe we've abused our building, so I'm going to go give it a hug and put some new technology in it and all that other stuff.
Paint it green, baby. Paint it green.
Paint it green. Paint it green. Well, listen to our Control Trends community. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Eric Stromquist. He is Ken Smyers, the man, the myth, the legend. We appreciate you guys. Have a great week. Remember, be bold, stay in control, stay relevant, and hug a building.
Indeed, Eric.
Indeed, Kenny Smyers. There you go. All right. Hey, man. All right,